My son and his wife posted a photo drinking mimosas on the sun-drenched deck of the world's absolute largest luxury cruise ship. The caption read, "Family vacation, just the three of us." They were technically right about the number 3. They took their biological son, Leo. They took their expensive designer luggage, but they left my 8-year-old adopted granddaughter locked alone in a dark, suffocating house with a loaf of moldy bread and a handwritten note that callously read, "Be good." They thought I was just a tired, retired old man who would not notice. Before I tell you how I crashed their $20,000 vacation and made them famous in the absolute worst way possible, you need to understand how the nightmare began. The red glowing numbers on my digital alarm clock read 2:03 a.m. There is no grogginess, no slow stretching, no rubbing your eyes. When the phone on my wooden nightstand vibrated against the table, I was fully awake before my calloused hand even touched the receiver. I expected a wrong number. I certainly did not expect the heartbreaking sound of a terrified child desperately trying not to cry. "Grandpa," it was a frail whisper. It was Mia, my 8-year-old granddaughter, Mia. I sat up, the heavy quilt falling to my waist. "Why are you whispering, honey?" "Is everything okay, Grandpa? I am so thirsty." The confusion hit me first, like a physical blow. Why was she calling me at 2 in the morning? Because she was thirsty. My son, Austin, and his wife, Monica, were notoriously heavy sleepers, but they were certainly not deaf. "Honey, go ask your daddy for some water. It is very late. I cannot." Her tiny voice cracked. A devastating, splintering sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. "The door is locked, Grandpa, the big door." "What do you mean, the big door, Mia?" "The front door, and the back door, and the garage door." "I think they are gone, Grandpa. It is really dark, and I heard a scary noise in the basement, and I am so scared." My blood ran instantly cold. It was a visceral, physical sensation, like someone had injected freezing ice water directly into my veins. I did not ask her to check the rooms again. A man knows when something is profoundly wrong. It is a primal instinct. I survived 30 grueling years in the military by listening to that instinct, and right now, it was screaming at me like an air raid siren. "Listen to me, Mia." I was already out of bed, pulling on my heavy trousers with one hand while holding the phone tightly with the other. "I want you to go into your closet right now. Take your favorite blanket, close the closet door tightly, and sit on the floor. Do not come out until you hear my voice. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandpa, I am coming. Stay on the line if you want, but do not make a single sound." I did not bother with socks. I shoved my bare feet directly into my heavy work boots and grabbed my truck keys off the dresser. Then I paused. I opened the top drawer of my nightstand and took out my Sig Sauer pistol. Loaded. I did not know what was waiting for me at Austin's house. Maybe it was a violent break-in. I drove the typical 20-minute route in 12. My heavy truck tore through the suburban silence, ignoring stop signs when the dark intersections were clear. The phone lay on the passenger seat, the line open but silent. Austin was my son, but he was soft. But Monica, my daughter-in-law, she was different. I pulled into their long driveway, and my bright headlights swept across the expansive front of the house. Dark, but the most chilling detail was the large driveway itself. It was empty. Austin's expensive luxury SUV was gone. The heavy silence of the house was profoundly heavier than the darkness. I killed the engine and grabbed the spare brass key I always kept safely in my glove box. I ran to the heavy oak front door. My grip on the cold pistol in my jacket pocket tightened significantly. "Mia," I called out, my voice booming authoritatively in the grand entryway. Absolute silence. The power was out. No, wait, it was not out. It was deliberately shut off. I could clearly see the main breakers on the electrical wall panel near the kitchen were manually flipped down. Who in their right mind shuts off the main power when they leave a helpless child at home? I turned on the bright flashlight on my phone. The large house felt abandoned. It had that specific haunting smell of a place where life had abruptly stopped. I moved toward the stairs, but then I remembered my strict order. The closet. I took the carpeted stairs 2 at a time. I went straight to Mia's room. The guest room was bigger. The home office was bigger. Mia's room was starkly bare. "Mia, it is Grandpa." The closet door creaked open agonizingly slowly. A tiny, fragile figure emerged from the deep shadows. I recognized it immediately. It was the absolute only toy I could see in the entire room. She launched herself desperately at me. She was trembling, so her teeth were audibly chattering. I quickly holstered my weapon and scooped her up into my arms. "Shh, I have got you," I murmured, holding her tight, feeling her hot tears soak rapidly into my flannel shirt. "You are safe now." I carried her downstairs. I desperately needed to understand. The sharp beam of my flashlight swept across the expensive marble countertops that Monica was so proud of. That was when I saw it. A piece of yellow notebook paper carelessly taped to the stainless steel refrigerator. My hand actually shook. As I pulled it off, I shined the bright light directly on the handwriting. It was Monica's loopy, artistic script, the exact kind she pretentiously used for her fake thank you cards. "Mia, we have taken Leo to a special training camp for his elite baseball team. We will be gone for 2 weeks. There is bread on the counter. Do not go outside under any circumstances. Be good, we are watching you closely on the cameras." I stared at the note 2 entire weeks. Green, fuzzy spots of mold were blooming on the crust. I felt a rage so pure, so hot, it almost physically blinded me. This was intentional malice. They deliberately left an 8-year-old child alone for 2 full weeks, with moldy bread, and a psychological threat that the police would take her to a bad place if she dared to seek help. I looked at the refrigerator. I pulled the handle. It wouldn't budge. I shined the light directly on the double doors. I looked at Mia. "Why is the fridge locked, honey?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady and calm. "Mommy said I steal food," she whispered, hiding her face. "She said I eat way too much, and that is why groceries are so expensive. She said the food inside is exclusively for Leo because he is a growing boy, and I am just lucky to even have a roof." I set Mia down gently on one of the wooden bar stools. "Stay right here, baby." I walked purposefully out to my truck and grabbed the heavy-duty bolt cutters from my steel toolbox. I walked back inside. The thick metal snapped with a loud, violent crack that echoed through the empty house. The heavy chain rattled loudly to the floor. I pulled the large doors open. The interior light did not come on because the power was cut, but my flashlight revealed the devastating truth. It was fully stocked, premium cuts of steak, fresh organic fruit, whole milk, imported juice, rows of expensive yogurt, and a large custom bakery cake that cheerfully read, "Happy Vacation." They had chained it shut, not to save rotting food, but to deliberately starve her. I grabbed a bottle of water and cracked it open, handing it immediately to Mia. She drank it in one long, desperate gulp, gasping heavily for air when she finally finished. "We are leaving right now," I told her, my voice cold as ice. "Do not pack anything. Leave everything here." I drove her back to my house. I was not panicked anymore. The panic had burned away. I was intensely focused. When we got to my house, I made her a hot bowl of creamy tomato soup and a thick grilled cheese sandwich. She ate it like it was the finest, most luxurious meal she had ever tasted. After she finally fell asleep in my guest room, safely wrapped in a clean, warm duvet, I went straight into my study. I could not sleep. Training camp was a blatant lie. I logged into Facebook. There was nothing on Austin's page. He was smart enough to stay quiet. Her entire life was a fake performance, and she constantly needed an audience. I went directly to her Instagram profile, posted 4 hours ago, a high-resolution picture of the 3 of them. The background was unmistakable, colorful water slides, an endless ocean view. The caption cheerfully read, "Finally some peace, Royal Caribbean icon of the seas, 15 days of absolute bliss with my boys. Family first, luxury life blessed, no distractions." I zoomed in tightly on the photo. They looked happy. They looked profoundly relieved. I picked up my phone. The war had just officially begun. I dialed the premier customer service number for the airline. I have been a platinum status member for over 20 years, and I know how to effectively navigate their automated systems to get information. I told the sleepy agent on the phone that I was Austin's father, and I simply wanted to confirm their return flight details so I could arrange to pick them up from the airport. I provided his date of birth and home address. It was a minor security breach, but the agent sounded exhausted, and I sounded authoritative. "Oh yes, Mr. Slater," the agent said cheerfully. "The tickets for Austin, Monica, and Leo Slater were booked 6 months ago. Round trip from Chicago to Miami, first class, very nice, 6 months." I repeated, my voice dropping. "Yes, sir, 6 months ago." I hung up the phone. This was not a sudden emergency. For 6 months they sat at the family dinner table with Mia, knowing full well they were going to leave her behind like a piece of unwanted, defective furniture. They had deliberately saved money. They had probably bought that heavy bicycle chain weeks ago. I looked at the large calendar hanging on my wall. Today was Tuesday. The ship had just left the port of Miami yesterday. Their first scheduled port of call was Nassau, Bahamas, arriving tomorrow morning. He looked like me. I closed the laptop. The sad, accommodating grandfather, who just wanted everyone to get along, died in that cold, dark kitchen tonight. I walked over to the heavy steel safe hidden in the corner of my study. A very thick stack of $100 bills securely wrapped in a rubber band. I quickly counted out $10,000. I am not just going to rescue Mia, I whispered to the empty room. I am going to destroy their vacation. I am going to destroy their reputation, and then I am going to legally take my granddaughter back forever. I booked 2 extremely expensive, last-minute, one-way tickets to Nassau. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the early morning sky a deep, bruised blood red. The automatic sliding doors of the departures terminal parted, and a wall of noise hit us instantly. It was the specific, chaotic frequency of international travel. Crying babies, rolling suitcases clattering loudly over the tile floors, the droning voice of the intercom constantly announcing delays. For most people, this environment is a headache. For me, it was just another logistical puzzle to efficiently solve. I held Mia's hand very tightly. Her tiny palm was sweating. It was pink and slightly too big, but she looked clean. That was all that mattered. We joined the long line for the check-in counter. The digital board above us flashed the flight information. Miami to Nassau. We were cutting it very close, but in my vast experience, the best military missions are the ones where you do not have excessive time to overthink. I looked down at Mia. "Grandpa, are you sure we can go?" she asked softly. "Mommy said airplane tickets cost $1 million. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Mommy lies, Mia. We are going." We finally reached the front of the line. The agent was a young woman with tired eyes and a plastic name tag that read Sarah. She looked like she had been yelled at 5 times already this morning. I gave her my most polite, professional smile, the specific one I used to reserve for inspecting generals and foreign diplomats. "2 one-way tickets to Nassau, please. First class if you have it." Mia's eyes widened to the size of saucers. Sarah typed quickly on her keyboard, her long acrylic nails clicking rhythmically. She asked for my passport and Mia's official birth certificate, which I luckily always kept in my own safe deposit box for emergencies. I handed them over along with my heavy platinum credit card. I had built my credit score with the exact same ruthless discipline I built my military career. I paid everything in full. Always Sarah swiped the card. I watched her face closely. It was a slight frown followed by a tilt of the head. "I am sorry, sir," she said professionally. The card was declined. The words hung heavily in the air between us. Behind me, a man in an expensive business suit sighed loudly, dramatically checking his Rolex. "Try it again, please," I said calmly. "There must be a computer mistake. I have a 0 balance on that card." She nodded and swiped it again. This time she typed in the long numbers manually. A long pause. Then she looked up at me with something far worse than mere annoyance. She looked at me with pity. "It is declined again, sir. You might want to step aside and call your bank." The man behind me groaned loudly. "Buddy, if you cannot pay, move aside. Some of us have important places to be." I turned around slowly. "Do not test me over a boarding pass." He immediately shut his mouth and looked down at his phone. I stepped to the side of the counter, but I did not leave. "Did I do something wrong, Grandpa?" she whispered, terrified. "No, honey. Stand right here next to my leg." I pulled out my phone and dialed the priority VIP number on the back of my card. "This is William Slater, authorization code Zulu Tango 9er. Why is my card being rejected?" "Mr. Slater." The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. "We put a freeze on the account due to suspicious activity. Since it was an in-person transaction, we assumed it was you, but the subsequent travel purchase flagged our fraud algorithm." I froze. "I did not make a withdrawal," I said, my voice dropping a dangerous octave. "How much?" $25,000, sir." The teller officially verified the signature on file. I closed my eyes. Main Street. That was where Austin worked. He was not just a regular customer. He knew all the tellers. and he knew how to flawlessly forge my signature because he had spent his entire childhood practicing it on report cards he did not want me to see. The profound betrayal hit me far harder than the financial loss. It was not just theft, it was an execution. He had cleaned me out to fund his luxurious paradise. He wanted to make sure that even if I somehow found out about Mia, I would be too broke to do anything about it. He thought he had stranded me. He thought he had brilliantly cut my supply lines. He forgot who he was dealing with. "Sir, do you want to officially dispute the charge?" The banker asked. "No," I said coldly. "Leave it, I will handle it personally." I hung up. I looked at Sarah, the ticket agent. She was already eagerly waving the rude businessman forward. "Excuse me," I said, stepping back in front of him. "I am not finished, sir. If the card is declined, there is nothing I can do," Sarah said, her patience wearing visibly thin. I did not argue. I did not beg. I simply knelt down on one knee right there on the polished airport floor. Mia looked at me, confused. "Look at this, the old guy is praying," he mocked. I ignored him. I reached down to my left boot. You never trust a local bank in a war zone. You never trust a pocket that can easily be picked. I stood up and placed the envelope heavily on the counter. Inside was a stack of $100 bills, fresh, crisp, uncirculated, my emergency fund. I rapidly counted out the money. 2,000. I kept counting until the pile on the counter looked like something from a major drug bust. "I believe this is legal tender," I said, keeping my voice flat. "2 first-class tickets to Nassau, and I want the window seats." Sarah stared at the mountain of cash. She swallowed very hard. "Yes, sir, of course, sir." She started counting the money, her hands shaking slightly. The rude businessman was dead silent. I turned to look at him. He was suddenly very interested in the ceiling tiles. I looked down at Mia. She was looking at the money, and then at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Grandpa, why do you have money in your shoe?" "Because banks can make mistakes, Mia," I said, loud enough for the people around us to clearly hear. "And because sometimes the people you trust the most are the exact ones who steal from you. But you never let them stop the mission. Do you understand?" She nodded solemnly. Sarah handed me the premium boarding passes. Her attitude had changed. There was deep respect in her eyes now. I did not care which. "Thank you, Mr. Slater. Have a safe flight." I took the tickets. I took Mia's hand. We walked toward security. I could feel the weight of the remaining cash pressing tightly against my ankle. It was mildly uncomfortable, but it was a good pain. It was the feeling of ammunition. Austin thought he had successfully disarmed me. I was a soldier deploying to a hostile theater, and I had just secured transport. The seatbelt sign dinged off with a soft, pleasant chime that sounded like a bell, marking the beginning of a new round in a heavyweight boxing match. We were leveling off at 30,000 feet, leaving the gray clouds of the East Coast far behind and piercing into the brilliant, unyielding blue of the upper atmosphere. I adjusted my seat, reclining it just enough to ease the dull ache in my lower back. Next to me, Mia sat rigid in her wide leather seat. In first class, the seats are like armchairs, wide and enveloping, designed to make you totally forget you are hurtling through the air in a metal tube. But Mia looked swallowed by it. She had not let go of the armrest since takeoff. Her knuckles were stark white. A flight attendant moved gracefully down the aisle. "Good morning, Mr. Slater," she said, checking her digital tablet. "And good morning to you. Young lady, can I get you something to drink? We have fresh orange juice, apple juice, soda, or hot chocolate. And we have warm chocolate chip cookies coming out of the oven in just a minute." I looked at Mia, fully expecting her eyes to light up. Any 8-year-old I knew would have jumped at the mention of warm cookies. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but I saw it clearly. "No, thank you," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the jet engines. I frowned. "Honey, you have not eaten anything since that grilled cheese sandwich hours ago. Have some juice, get a cookie." Mia shook her head vigorously, her dark hair whipping across her face. "I am not hungry, Grandpa, I am fine." Just then her stomach gave a loud, undeniable growl. "I will leave some snacks right here on the console just in case," she said, placing a bowl of warm mixed nuts and a glass of apple juice on the tray table. She moved on to the next row. I waited until she was gone. Then I turned in my seat to face my granddaughter. "Mia, look at me," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Why are you lying to me? Why did you say no?" She looked down at her lap, picking nervously at a loose thread on her jeans. "Because it costs money, Grandpa," she said finally. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean in to hear her. I sat back confused. "Honey, I bought the tickets. The food is fully included. It does not cost extra." She shook her head again, hot tears welling up in her eyes. "No, Grandpa. Mommy said nothing is free," she said. "If I am not careful, we will not be able to pay the electric bill, and the lights will go out, and it will be all my fault." I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a physical blow, harder than any punch I had ever taken in a bar fight. This was psychological warfare. Monica was not just starving Mia's body. She was poisoning her developing mind. I thought about the expensive receipts I had seen in Austin's office when I helped him with his taxes last year. Monica's designer handbags cost $3,000 each. Austin's elite golf club membership was $500 a month. They drove luxury cars, they drank imported wine, and yet they had looked this innocent little girl in the eye and told her that a $3 soda was the reason they were struggling. They were gaslighting her. They were teaching her to apologize for her very existence. I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned my body toward her. "Mia, listen to me very closely," I said. "Every word I am about to say is the absolute truth. Do you know that Grandpa used to be in charge of moving supplies for thousands of soldiers? I managed millions of dollars of equipment. I know how much things cost." She nodded, sniffing back a tear. "Your mother lied to you," I stated. Mia's eyes widened. "She is not supposed to lie. Lying is a sin," she lied, I repeated. "You are not expensive. You are not a burden. The reason they complain about bills is because your mother buys clothes she does not need to impress people she does not like. It has nothing to do with you. You eating a cookie does not make the lights go out. Do you understand me?" She looked doubtful. "But Mommy said Mommy is wrong." I cut her off. "And right now, Mommy is not here. See this glass of juice? It is done. If you drink it, it is paid for. If you pour it on the floor, it is paid for. I have enough money to buy this whole plane full of cookies if I wanted to." A tiny ghost of a smile touched the corner of her lips. "The whole plane?" "The whole plane," I confirmed. "So here is the new rule. For the next 2 weeks while we are on this mission, you do not look at price tags. You do not worry about bills. Your only job is to be an 8-year-old girl, and I will definitively handle your parents." I reached over and picked up the glass of apple juice. I held it out to her. "Drink it," I commanded gently. She hesitated for 1 second before her intense thirst won out. She took the glass with both hands and drank the whole thing without stopping. "Good," I said. "Now, press that blue button on your armrest." She pushed the button. The silver-haired flight attendant appeared instantly. "Yes, sir. Can I get you something else?" "My granddaughter would like a warm chocolate chip cookie," I said. "Actually, make it 2. And do you have any ice cream?" "We have vanilla bean sundaes with hot fudge." "We will take one of those too. Is that okay with you, Mia?" Mia saw the fierce determination in my eyes. "Yes, please," she whispered. When the food came, Mia ate. She ate with a focus that broke my heart. I had 2 weeks to undo it. "Mia," I said, "I want you to remember this feeling, being full. Not while I am breathing." We hit a patch of turbulence then. The plane dipped suddenly. Mia gasped and reached for my hand. I held it tight. I was a rock. The real storm was waiting for us in Nassau, and I was fully ready to fly straight into the eye of it. The intense humidity in Nassau hit us like a heavy, wet towel the exact moment we stepped out of the air-conditioned airport terminal. It was not the pleasant, relaxing warmth of a tropical vacation. It was a suffocating, heavy heat that smelled strongly of diesel fumes, roasting asphalt, and too many bodies pressed into too small a space. We took a battered taxi directly to the cruise port. The driver was a talkative man with gold teeth who desperately wanted to talk about the weather and the best local places to buy rum cakes. I ignored him. My mind was not on the beautiful scenery. It was calculating strict timelines. The Icon of the Seas had officially docked at 7 o'clock this morning. It was scheduled to leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was currently 11:30. When we finally arrived at the Prince George Wharf, it was absolute, unmitigated bedlam. They wore matching bright t-shirts and floppy hats, their skin already turning an alarming shade of pink under the relentless Caribbean sun. The noise was totally deafening. Steel drum music clashed with the loud shouting of tour operators and the aggressive honking of shuttle buses. I gripped Mia's hand so tight, Her knuckles turned stark white. "Stay close to my leg," I instructed her. "Do not let go for any reason, do you understand?" She nodded rapidly, her eyes wide with overwhelming sensory overload. "It is a secure floating fortress. They have metal detectors, advanced X-ray machines, and hardened guards who take their jobs very seriously." I approached the main security gate. A large man in a crisp white uniform held up a hand to stop us. He looked tired and sweaty, and uninterested in hearing any kind of sob story. "ID and C-Pass cards," he droned robotically, not even looking me in the eye. "I do not have a C-Pass card," I said, my voice cutting sharply through the chaotic noise of the crowd. "I am here to purchase a day pass to board the ship." He laughed, a short, dry, dismissive bark of a laugh. "Day passes are exclusively sold online, sir, months in advance. Unless you are a registered guest or official crew, you are not getting past this yellow line. Step aside, please, you are blocking the flow." I did not step aside, I planted my feet. I knew that every single barrier has a specific key, and usually, that key is unwavering confidence backed heavily by leverage. "I am not a tourist," I said, stepping deliberately closer to him so he was forced to look directly at me. "My son is on that ship. He has my stolen property. I intimately need 2 hours. I am more than willing to pay the premium gate price." "Look, old man." The guard sighed heavily, putting his hand defensively on his utility belt. "I do not care if your son is the King of England. No official pass, no entry. Now move before I call the local police." Mia shrank timidly behind me, visibly trembling. "Grandpa, let's go. He is scary." I looked at the unyielding guard. I looked at the long line of wealthy tourists breezing happily past us, casually flashing their plastic key cards. I realized in that moment that following the rules was a luxury exclusively for people who had time. I did not have time. I reached into my deep pocket and pulled out the thick money clip. I folded them very small into the palm of my right hand. I leaned in closely. "Listen to me very carefully. I am just a desperate grandfather trying to fix a mistake. I need you to point me to the supervisor who directly handles VIP guest lists. I know there is always a strict quota for local dignitaries and emergency family visits." I pressed the folded bills smoothly into his hand. Then he looked at Mia. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes. He saw the unshakable determination in mine. The rigid bureaucracy in his face softened just a fraction. "Go to the blue tent on the far left," he muttered quietly, pointing discreetly away from the main crowd. "Ask for Mr. Tell him you are looking for the Friends and Family Excursion Pass. But if he says no, you did not hear it from me, thank you," I said respectfully. I moved us immediately toward the blue tent. Mr. 20 minutes that felt like 20 years, but finally he handed me 2 thick lanyards with plastic cards. "These are valid until 4:30, he warned sternly. "If you are not officially off the ship by then, you will be sailing directly to Mexico." I put the lanyard around Mia's neck. It looked huge on her. The intense heat was radiating off the pavement, making the heavy air shimmer. And then the crowd parted, and we finally saw it. It was not merely a ship. It was painted in garish white and teal, with water slides coiling dangerously around the very top like colorful intestines. It was the kind of obnoxious thing my son Austin would love. It was a place where you could easily pretend the real world did not exist. I looked up at the thousands of glass balconies lining the side of the ship. Somewhere in there, they were laughing. I adjusted the dark sunglasses on my nose. I looked down at Mia. She was staring up at the ship, her mouth open. "Is that where they are, Grandpa?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "That is where they are. Are we going to yell at them?" "No," I said, taking her hand and walking toward the gangway. "We are not going to yell. Yelling is for people who do not have a plan. We are going to teach them a profound lesson." We stepped onto the heavy metal ramp. The sound of our footsteps on the steel was heavy and final. We were boarding the enemy vessel. The main dining hall on Deck 15 was an absolute cathedral of gluttony. It was officially called the Windjammer Marketplace, but it looked significantly more like a chaotic Roman orgy reimagined by a corporate accountant. It was a complete sensory assault. Everywhere I looked, there were mountains of food, tall pyramids of chilled jumbo shrimp glistening brightly under the halogen lights. Carving stations where prime rib was casually sliced into thick slabs by men in tall white hats. Towers of rich desserts that seemingly defied gravity. I held Mia's hand tightly as we carefully navigated through the dense maze of crowded tables. She was walking with a slight limp, not because she was physically injured, but because she was profoundly overwhelmed. She had spent the last 2 days desperately rationing a single loaf of moldy bread. The waste was obscene. It was a physical manifestation of the exact entitlement that had almost killed my granddaughter. I scanned the room. It was heavily crowded, but finding them was not difficult. Or at least the people who were desperately trying to be the center of attention. I saw the bright ring light first. It was a small, portable halo of intense white LED light, securely clamped onto the edge of a premium table near the floor-to-ceiling windows. The absolute best seat in the entire house, naturally. She was casually holding a crystal glass of rosé wine in one hand and gesturing wildly with the other, talking animatedly to her phone screen. She was desperately selling the fake fantasy of the perfect, exhausted mother, enjoying a well-deserved break. Sitting directly across from her was Austin, my son. He was wearing an obnoxious floral shirt, unbuttoned one too many buttons down. His face was flushed with alcohol, and he was laughing loudly at something Monica was saying to her invisible digital audience. In front of him sat a silver platter that took up half the table. A bright red lobster, steamed in its shell, surrounded by fresh mussels and buttered corn on the cob. And then there was Leo, my 10-year-old grandson. He was sitting quietly at the very end of the table, slumped over a digital tablet. In front of him was a simple plate of chicken nuggets and fries that had gone cold. He looked profoundly bored. He looked intensely lonely. I felt a tight squeeze on my hand. Mia had stopped walking. She was staring intently at the table. Her lower lip was trembling. "Grandpa," she whispered, "is that Daddy?" "Yes, honey," I said. "That is Daddy. Is he going to be mad at us for coming?" I knelt down on one knee right there in the middle of the busy buffet line, blocking a man with a plate full of nachos. "He has officially lost the right to be mad, Mia. He has lost the right to be anything but ashamed. Do not say a single word. Just watch." I stood up. The piece of paper felt heavy, like a lead weight. We moved forward. The noise of the restaurant was totally deafening, but as I got closer, the entire world seemed to go silent. All I could clearly hear was Monica's high-pitched voice. It was fake, the exact kind of obnoxious tone people use when they are talking to cute puppies or thousands of social media followers. "We are just so blessed, you guys," she was saying eagerly into the camera. "Austin and I have been working so hard, and we just really needed this special time to reconnect as a couple. If you do not fill your own cup, you cannot pour into others, right?" She took a long sip of wine and giggled. Austin reached out and grabbed a lobster claw. He cracked it open loudly, and the sound was like a sharp gunshot. Hot butter juice squirted directly onto his chin. He laughed, casually wiping it away with a cloth napkin. "This is the life, baby," he said happily. "This is the absolute life." They were so wrapped up in their thick bubble of narcissism that they did not notice the 68-year-old man and the terrified little girl standing 2 feet away from them. They did not notice the shadow I cast directly over their expensive table, blocking out the bright Bahamian sun. I waited patiently. I wanted them to fully commit to the lie before I shattered it into a million pieces. Monica smiled brightly at the phone. "We definitely miss the little ones, of course, but sometimes you just have to." She stopped dead. Her eyes had drifted slowly past the phone screen and landed directly on me. It became a terrifying rictus of deep confusion. Her brain simply could not process the impossible data. Bill Slater was in Chicago. Bill Slater was an old man who watched TV and went to bed at 9 o'clock. Bill Slater was not standing on the deck of the Icon of the Seas, looking like the furious angel of death. "Dad," Austin choked. He dropped the lobster claw. It clattered loudly onto the fine china plate. I did not speak. Not yet. I wanted an explicit action that they could not edit out of their viral video. My hand moved deliberately. In a profound way I pulled out the yellow piece of notebook paper. I smoothed it out carefully in my hand. The live comments were probably flying rapidly up the screen, asking who the angry old man was. She didn't move a single muscle to turn it off. I took a firm step forward and slapped the paper down, right in the very center of Austin's plate. The hot grease from the butter immediately started to soak into the paper, turning the yellow fibers translucent. "Be good." The silence at the table was absolute. "Grandpa," Leo said softly, Mia Austin looked intensely at the paper. Then he looked slowly up at me. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I leaned in close. I placed both my heavy hands on the edge of the table, leaning my weight forward so I towered directly over him. I could smell the expensive cologne he wore, desperately trying to mask the foul scent of his own profound cowardice. "I hope the expensive lobster is good, son," I said. "I hope it tastes significantly better than the moldy bread you left for your adopted daughter." Monica finally forcefully found her high-pitched voice. She frantically scrambled to grab her phone, desperately trying to abruptly end the live stream, but her hands were shaking so bad she dropped it. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked hysterically. "You cannot be here. Someone call security right now." I laughed. It was a cold, profoundly dark sound. "Go ahead, Monica. I want you to call them because I have a high-definition video directly on my phone of you chaining a refrigerator shut. And I think the Bohemian police and the thousands of specific people currently watching your little live stream would be very interested to see it." Austin stood up, awkwardly knocking his chair over in his desperate haste. "Dad, please, let's not do this right here. People are staring. Sit down," I barked. It was the exact authoritative voice I used to command battalions. I beckoned Mia forward. She stepped carefully out from behind me, tightly clutching her worn teddy bear. She looked small against the backdrop of the deep ocean, but she stood her ground bravely. "Look at her, Austin." I pointed a stern finger directly at Mia. "Look at your daughter. You told her she was far too expensive to bring along. You deliberately left her in the dark to rot, while you sat here cracking expensive claws and drinking imported wine." Austin couldn't look. "I did not know, Dad," he mumbled pathetically. "Monica said she hired a professional nanny. She said everything was taken care of, liar." I slammed my hand on the table, making the fine silverware jump into the air. "I saw the text messages, Austin. You stole from me, and you abandoned her." I picked up the lobster plate. I held it high, looking directly at the grotesque excess of it. Then I looked at the yellow note, stuck to the delicate meat. "Be good." I read the note aloud. I dropped the plate forcefully back onto the table. It shattered. The sharp sound of breaking china echoed through the entire dining hall. Conversation stopped instantly. Heads turned rapidly. "We are officially taking Leo," I stated calmly, "and we are officially taking Mia. You two can casually finish your meal. But when you finally get back to Miami, I guarantee you, there will be a welcoming committee waiting for you that you are not going to like." I turned to Leo. "Pack your things, son. We are moving to a different room." Leo didn't hesitate for a single second. He grabbed his iPad and stood up confidently. Monica stared blankly at the shattered plate, the yellow note now swimming sadly in a greasy pool of butter and broken ceramic. "Enjoy the rest of the cruise," I said. I took Mia's hand gently with my left and Leo's hand with my right. We turned our backs definitively on the table. The tense silence that followed the shattering of the lobster plate lasted 3 seconds. It is that exceptionally brief, breathless moment when the shocked enemy is processing the profound ambush before their survival instincts kick in. He shrank pathetically into his ugly floral shirt, a spineless jellyfish of a man who was terrified of confrontation. But Monica was not a jellyfish. She was a venomous viper, and I had just forcefully stepped on her tail in front of her entire digital audience. She did not cry immediately. First, her cold eyes narrowed dangerously. She quickly realized that her carefully curated digital narrative of the perfect luxury vacation was dissolving. She could admit she was a horrible monster who abandoned an innocent child, or she could seamlessly paint me as the violent villain. "Help!" she screamed. It was a blood-curdling sound. "He is taking them. He is kidnapping my children. Someone help me, please." She dramatically threw herself across the table, knocking over the heavy wine bucket. Freezing ice and water spilled everywhere, thoroughly soaking the fine tablecloth and dripping heavily onto the floor. It was a crucial part of the set dressing. "Let go of him," she hissed menacingly at me, then looked pleadingly up at the large crowd, with fake tears suddenly streaming rapidly down her face. "Please, he is not well at all. He is having a severe episode." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. A moment ago, I was the righteous grandfather brilliantly exposing a sin. Now, to the uninformed, reactionary observers, I was a dangerous, crazy old man, dragging two terrified children away from their weeping mother. I felt the dangerous change in the air pressure. The intense hostility radiating from the surrounding tables was palpable. "Monica, stop this," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. "Do not make this worse." She ignored me. She turned desperately to a very large man sitting at the exact next table, a muscular tourist with sunburned shoulders who looked like he had been waiting his whole entire life to be a hero. "He has extremely advanced dementia," she sobbed dramatically, pointing a shaking finger directly at me. "He thinks it is 20 years ago. He broke into our house." Look directly at her, Mia. "Come to mommy, baby, come here before he seriously hurts you." Mia froze. Her small hand was sweating profusely in mine. But to the loud crowd, her intense fear looked like the reaction of a victim being held by her captor. "Stay tightly with me, Mia," I whispered softly. "Hey, buddy," the large sunburned tourist stood up, blocking my path. "Let the kids go." I looked him straight in the eye. I did not blink. "Step aside, son. This is an explicit family matter. It does not look like a family matter. It looks like you are harassing this poor lady," the man said, puffing out his thick chest. More chairs scraped loudly against the hard floor. Other men were forcefully standing up now, emboldened by the first. Smartphones were eagerly raised, recording every single intense second. I could clearly see the viral headlines already. "Deranged veteran terrorizes family on cruise ship." I looked at Austin. He was still sitting pathetically at the ruined table, picking nervously at a small hangnail. "Austin!" I barked. Tell them who I am. Tell them what you did." Austin looked slowly up. His wide eyes darted frantically around the room, seeing the angry mob, seeing his wife's brilliant, dramatic performance. He saw the clear path of least resistance. "Dad, please," Austin said, his voice trembling just enough to sound convincingly heartbroken. "Just please put the kids down. We can get you help. I told you we would pay for the state facility. You did not have to do this." The absolute betrayal was so sharp, I almost laughed out loud. He was doubling down. The angry mob murmured heavily in agreement. "Oh, that is sad. He definitely belongs in a facility." Poor loving family. Monica saw she was winning. She tried desperately to snatch Mia's hand away. "Get your hands off her," I snarled, stepping efficiently directly between them. "Do not touch her," Monica shrieked loudly, recoiling as if I had physically hit her. She looked dramatically at the camera phones. "Did you all see that? He just hit me." I had not touched her. I had simply blocked her specific path, but in the court of public opinion, the actual truth does not matter. Only the explicit angle of the phone camera uniquely matters. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the large restaurant burst open. "Security, move aside, make a hole." 4 men in pristine white uniforms marched in. They were not the corrupt gate guards I had easily bribed. These were the ship's elite tactical security team. They prominently carried powerful tasers and heavy zip ties. They moved with a precise coordination that told me they were former military or seasoned police. "Sir," the lead officer, a man with a thick neck and a heavy radio securely clipped to his broad shoulder, stepped forward. His right hand hovered over the taser on his belt. "I need you to release the minors and step away from the family." "Right now, I am the family," I stated calmly. "I am the grandfather. These specific children are in danger with these terrible people." "Sir, I am not going to ask you twice. Release the specific children. Put your empty hands where I can clearly see them." I looked at Mia. If I let go right now, Monica would take her. They would forcefully drag her back to that cabin. They would brutally gaslight her into believing I was crazy. I would be thrown directly into the ship's dark brig, and by the exact time we safely reached Miami, the fake narrative would definitively be set in stone. It was an absolute tactical checkmate. Monica knew it. She was visibly smirking behind her manicured hands, dramatically wiping away fake tears, while her cold eyes gleamed with pure malice. I smoothly made a tactical calculation. I had to de-escalate physically to escalate legally. "It is okay, Mia," I whispered softly, kneeling smoothly down so I was eye level with her. "I am not leaving you, I promise, but I have to talk to these men. Do not let anyone take you out of this specific room." I gently let go of her small hand. It felt like letting go of a vital lifeline. I stood up and raised my empty hand slowly, showing my open palms. "I am fully complying," I stated to the security officer. "I am unarmed. I legally possess specific tickets to be on this specific ship." The officer moved in fast. He spun me roughly around and pushed me against the hard buffet counter. I acutely felt the cold plastic of the heavy zip ties bite into my sore wrists. "You are hurting him," Leo shouted. "Stop it right now." Grandpa didn't officially do anything. "Mom is lying." The loud crowd went dead quiet. The absolute voice of a young child cuts through the loudest noise. "Leo, baby, shh." Monica rushed to him, trying to hug him tightly. "Grandpa is sick, honey. Don't listen to him. She is lying." Leo yelled loudly, pushing her away. We left Mia. We left her at home with no specific food. Grandpa came to safely save her. Monica's flushed face went totally pale. He looked from Leo to Monica. "What did the specific kid say?" Someone in the exact back row asked. "Officer," I said, my calm voice pressed against the cold metal of the buffet. "Check my breast pocket," the precise breast pocket of my shirt. The officer hesitated. "Do it," I commanded heavily, "unless you want to be sued for unlawful arrest when this entire whole explicit thing unravels." The officer carefully reached into my specific pocket. He pulled out the specific yellow note, the exact specific note that was heavily stained with lobster butter, totally but still clearly readable. "Read it," I commanded. "Read it out loud." The officer looked at the paper. "Mia, we have taken Leo to a special strict training camp. Be good. We are watching you on the explicit cameras." He frowned heavily. "Ma'am, is this specific your explicit handwriting?" Monica stammered. Her wide eyes darted frantically around the room. "No, I mean yes, but he forced effectively, purely, successfully, effectively wrote. Effectively forced me to write it." It was a weak, purely desperate lie, and for the first effective time, the entire crowd wasn't blindly buying it. You don't go on a luxury cruise to escape an abuser while deliberately leaving your child behind in his reach. The officer radioed the captain. The game was over. You do not go on a luxury cruise to escape an abuser while deliberately leaving your child behind in his reach. A woman in the crowd shouted. I turned my head to look at Austin. "Austin," I said, "this is your last chance. Look at your son. Look at Leo. He is 10 years old and he has more courage than you. Are you going to let your father be arrested for saving your daughter?" Austin looked at me. He looked at the zip ties on my wrists. He looked at the security guards. Austin started. "Shut up, Austin," Monica hissed venomously. "Don't say a word." Austin closed his mouth. I closed my eyes. The pain of the plastic zip ties cutting into my skin was nothing compared to the deep, crushing pain of that silence. The boy I raised, the boy I taught to ride a bike and catch a baseball, was dead. There was only this pathetic husk left, a hollow shell filled with fear and greed. "Fine," I said, opening my eyes. "Officer, I have hard evidence, and I have the recording of the call my granddaughter made to me at 2 in the morning, begging for water, because her parents padlocked the refrigerator." I looked straight at Monica. "I want to see the captain," I said, "and I want the FBI contact in Miami on the line, because this is not a petty family dispute anymore. This is a federal crime scene." The officer looked at the lobster-stained note again. He looked at the terrified little girl clinging tightly to her brave brother. He looked at the woman in the expensive dress, who was suddenly very quiet. "Cut him," the officer ordered his partner, "but keep eyes on him, all of us." The zip ties were cut. I rubbed my wrists slowly. I did not celebrate, I did not smile. I walked over to Mia and Leo. "Let's go," I said. We walked out of the restaurant surrounded by guards. The crowd parted for us this time, not with hostility, but with a heavy, uncomfortable silence. They didn't know who to believe yet, but they knew one thing for certain. The party was over. The perfect vacation was dead. Suddenly the crowd parted even wider. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and 4 gold stripes on his shoulder boards. He moved with the heavy weight of absolute maritime law. "He didn't look at the food report," the captain said. The officer handed him my phone, having already queued up the security footage from the cloud. He watched Monica loop the heavy bicycle chain. He heard her cruel voice stating Mia would eat everything and that they weren't paying to restock the house. He watched it all the way to the end without blinking. When it was finished, he handed the phone back. His face was carved from granite. "In 30 years at sea," the captain said, his voice low and resonant, "I have seen smugglers, but I have never seen anything quite as cowardly as this." "Captain, please." Monica tried to turn on the charm, batting her eyelashes desperately. It is a misunderstanding, my father-in-law. He is very vindictive. Be quiet. The captain's voice cracked like a whip. You have no rights on this vessel anymore. You are not guests. You are severe liabilities. He turned to his security team. Escort Mr. and Mrs. Slater to the brig. They are to be confined to separate holding cells until we reach the port of Miami. Confiscate their devices. But we paid for a suite. Austin protested weakly. We paid $20,000. Your refund will be processed by the federal prison system, the captain stated coldly. Get them out of my sight. 2 guards stepped forward. There were no zip ties this time, just firm, unyielding grips. Monica began to scream hysterically as they dragged her toward the exit. She screamed that she was going to sue. She screamed that she was famous. I watched them go. He had made his bed. The captain turned to me. His expression softened slightly, but he remained professional. Mr. Slater, he said. I assume you are the grandfather I am, I replied. You have done a brave thing today, the captain said. But we have strict procedures. I cannot let you walk freely around the ship. We have protocols for custody disputes. I understand, I said. I am not asking for a vacation, Captain, I just want them safe. We have a guest cabin near the bridge, real food. He looked down at Mia. She was hiding behind my leg. Clutching her bear, young lady, the captain said, kneeling down. Do you like burgers? Mia nodded slowly. I will have the chef send up the biggest cheeseburger on the ship. Would you like that? Mia smiled, a real genuine smile. Yes, please. The guest cabin near the bridge was not a luxurious prison cell, but it felt like a safe bunker. The only sound was the low hum of the ship's ventilation system and the rhythmic chewing of 2 very hungry children. Mia and Leo sat on the floor, their backs against the bed, devouring the cheeseburgers the captain had promised. They were not just filling their stomachs. I checked my watch. 2 hours since I watched my son being dragged away. I had completed the rescue mission, but all I felt was a heavy, cold exhaustion. It is a specific kind of terrible fatigue that comes from realizing your legacy, the bloodline you worked so hard to protect, has curdled into something unrecognizable. There was a soft knock on the door. I stiffened. I expected the captain, or maybe a steward, collecting the empty plates. I walked to the door and opened it just a crack. It was Austin. Standing directly behind him was a young security guard who looked uncomfortable. I told him I needed to give you Leo's asthma inhaler, Austin whispered. He would not look me in the eye. Please, Dad, just 5 minutes. I looked at the guard. He has 5 minutes, sir, the guard said, checking his watch. Captain's orders are strict confinement, but Mr. Slater insisted it was a medical emergency for the boy. Leo did not have asthma, he never had. It was another desperate lie, another manipulation. I stepped back and opened the door wide enough for him to slip in. Make it quick, I said. Austin stepped inside. The moment the door clicked shut, his mask fell. He did not look for Leo. He did not ask about the inhaler. He turned to me and grabbed my arm. His hands were freezing clammy. You have to drop the charges, he hissed. You have to tell the captain it was a misunderstanding. You have to tell them you overreacted. I pulled my arm away as if he were burning me. Is that why you are here? I asked, my voice dangerously low. To ask me to lie for you? Again? Dad, listen to me. Austin ran a shaking hand through his messy hair. You do not understand what is at stake. If I get officially charged with a felony, if there is a police record involving fraud or child neglect, I lose my federal license. I lose everything. I stared at him. I waited for the part where he asked if his daughter was okay after being locked in a dark house for 48 hours. It never came. You are destroying my marriage, Dad, Austin pleaded. Monica, she is going to leave me if the money stops. She said she cannot be with a loser. I looked at him, and for the first time in my entire life, I did not see my son. I saw a weak, pathetic man who had built a castle on a fragile foundation of sand and was now furiously blaming the tide for coming in. I am not destroying your marriage, Austin, I said, stepping directly into his personal space, forcing him to back up against the small desk. You destroyed it the moment you let that terrible woman put a heavy chain on your refrigerator. You destroyed it the moment you forged my signature to steal from a child. It was a short-term loan. Austin cried, I was going to pay it back. I just needed to double it. There was this crypto tip. Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop. You are a coward who hides behind his wife's cruelty because it is easier than being a man. Austin's face crumbled. He actually fell to his knees on the carpet, grasping desperately at my pants leg. "Dad, please, just don't let them file the charges." I looked down at him. I remembered the day he was born. I had bailed him out of bad grades, bad debts, and bad decisions. I pulled my leg sharply away. "Stand up," I commanded. He stood up, sniffling, wiping his nose on his expensive sleeve. "I am not going to safely save you this time, Austin," I said. "I am done. The bank is going to know. The police are going to know. You are going to lose the house. You are going to lose the luxury cars. You are going to lose Monica, because ruthless sharks do not stick around when the blood is in the water." Austin stared at me for one last second. "I hope you rot," he whispered. He did not say goodbye to his children. The door clicked shut. "Grandpa," he choked out, "is Dad going to jail?" I sat down between them, pulling them close into a tight huddle. "Yes, Leo," I said, "I will not lie to you. He is going to jail, but we are going to be safe." Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep in a makeshift pillow fort on the floor, I stepped into the small bathroom and dialed my lawyer, Rachel Stein. "Bill," her voice was crisp despite the late hour. "I ran a full asset check on Austin. The $25,000 he stole is the very tip of the iceberg. The house you live in." I felt the blood drain from my face. "My house, the home I built with my late wife. He blew it all on a speculative crypto coin scheme that massively crashed last month." Rachel continued relentlessly. "The bank payments have not been made. If we do nothing, you will lose the house. You will be on the street in 60 days. 60 days. Austin had not just abandoned his children, he had stolen their home. "What are my options?" I asked. "Choice A is you accept the debt," Rachel said. "You liquidate your retirement. Choice B is the absolute nuclear option. We go to the police, file a sworn affidavit that you did not sign that power of attorney. The bank eats the loss. You keep your house. He is looking at 10 to 15 years. I looked in the mirror. The man looking back at me was crying. Now I had to make mine. "Rachel," I said, my voice steady, "file the absolute charges. Are you sure, Bill? Once I send this packet to the FBI, there is no taking it back." "I am sure," I said. "He stole my house. He stole my grandchildren's future. He is not my son anymore." "Rachel, he is a liability. Cut him loose." When we finally docked in Miami, the flashing lights of the police cruisers were already waiting at the terminal. It was the absolute end of their reign of terror. A year has passed since that terrible cruise. The bank successfully reversed the fraudulent loans. The house is ours again, and as I sit on my porch watching them play in the yard, I know I made the absolute right choice. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me directly in the comments below what you would have done in my specific shoes. And if you believe that true justice demands a price, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be right here patiently waiting to warmly share more stories with you. See you directly in the extremely next one.